Qaisra Shasharz is a writer from Pakistan, now settled in Manchester, UK. She has to her credit novels, short stories, screenplays, and so on, translated widely into many global languages, including Chinese, Egyptian, Turkish, and Indian languages like Hindi and Malayalam. She is now here. Let's hear from her what she thinks about herself, her writing, literature, Pak identity, the issue of religious discourses, etc., etc. Ma'am, first of all, let me ask you, how do you describe yourself as a writer? To which category you belong?
I don't like to pigeonhole myself, but then I suppose I would say I write primarily quite a bit on women's lives or about women's issues. So a generic writer or fiction writer or literary writer, all of those aspects would describe my work. So I really don't have one label for myself, but I would say writing about women's issues. So it is quite seen as appealing particularly to women, I would say.
Does it happen to be about women's issues, or do you actually choose women's issues to create works?
It's both. My work is primarily about women's lives, and I choose deliberately to pick some issues related to women's lives, and I explore them in my work, whether it's in my novels, in my short story, or in drama serial. But I write on a broader way, of course. I've got to write about men's issue, etc. But primarily, I would say I've devoted quite a bit of my time relating to women's lives, women's issues.
Okay, if about women, which women or which woman you have in mind?
Okay.
Women of which religion, which place, which class?
Okay, so more women to do with my background, ethnic background, Pakistani women, for example. My two novels, The Holy Woman and Typhoon, are set in Pakistan, so they're about Pakistani women. Obviously, most of the women there are Muslim women, and again, like myself, I'm a Muslim woman, so you could say it's about Pakistani Muslim women. Having said that, my third novel is about an English woman, Daniela, so it's about a British woman. So there are women of all kinds, but primarily I would say more Pakistani women featured in my work than any other ethnic group.
Okay, from experience, from statistics, we know that it's a bit difficult, it's a bit impossible for women from Pakistan to be successful writers, but you are. What happened actually?
Right. I think at this moment in time, I would say the picture has changed. We have a lot of successful women writers, as well as myself. I mean, Bapsi Sidhwa is, the number one from Pakistan. We have Kamla Shamsi, we have Uzma, etc., and then scores of others, and I'm one of those amongst those. So when I first started writing, quite a few years, there were not many Muslim women writers at that time. But now I think we've got a very healthy scene, of which I'm very proud. And I'm so glad that Muslim men and women are putting Pakistan on the literary map. Of course, India is a brilliant place for writing. Indian writers have done tremendously well. I'm really proud of them. But I'm also glad that the Pakistani writers of both gender are beginning to get onto the international scene.
I have two doubts at this point. One thing is that most of the writers who express the Pak issues basically write in English, not in your mother tongue as such.
Right.
Isn't it a problem as such? Because you have to write in a foreign language and express the pangs of a culture that is being suffered and expressed in another language. How do you compromise this issue, being a Pakistani and writing in English?
Right. For me, there's no compromise because for me, my language is English, number one. Some of those writers might be from Pakistan, like Muhammad Khanif, for example. So he is writing in English, but he's a true Pakistani writer in the sense his first language is probably Urdu or Punjabi. For me, I couldn't write in any other language than English because I've learned English from the age of 8. It's the language of study, it's the language I speak, it's my first language. So I couldn't write in any other language even if I wanted to. But when I wrote the drama serial, I really, really wanted to write it in Urdu because it was being translated into a screenplay into Urdu. And I just wished I could have done it in my own home language. So in my case, the issue of language doesn't feature because English is my first language. Okay. By virtue of the fact that I'm British, I've been sort of bred there, educated there. So obviously, English language has taken over my life.
So you're sure that your mother tongue is English?
Well, mother tongue normally means the language of your mother. So in that respect, my mother tongue would be Punjabi or Urdu. But Mother tongue also means a language that you feel proficient in, you feel confident speaking. And unfortunately, I don't feel so confident in those two languages. I can only speak them at a basic level, but I'm not confident to write them. So in terms of proficiency of a first language, then I would say English has become my first language.
So you're saying from experience that it's possible to express things powerfully and effectively in a second language, in a foreign language, than in the technical mother tongue.
Absolutely. I mean, all these writers who've done really well and written good novels, then they are examples of that anyway. But one thing I did do in my work deliberately was I peppered my writing with words from Urdu, Muslim terms, and I did that deliberately to add a familiar flavor for readers who could identify with that culture, like yourself. You come from India, you could easily identify with the culture I portray. Similarly, I added Muslim terms so the Muslim reader can identify. But also, for readers who don't identify with that, it was a deliberate reminder that I'm writing about a culture which is not British, which is not English. It's another country, another culture, other customs. So I peppered some words from my other language. Having said that, I only did that insofar as I allowed my editor, who could not understand the language, say, look, what is acceptable, how much is acceptable to you as the non-speaker of the other language, and let them decide.
Yes, definitely takes us to another point. One thing that I have noted while reading stories by the writers of your group is that most of the stories are perfect, excellent in craft. And most of the writers, be it yourself or Sonia Kamal or Sefa Sawar, you have all undergone courses in creative writing. Does it really help? A qualification in creative writing, does it really help in writing?
Right. Yes and no. I don't think writing is something, it's like a skill. You can learn, or you have it, or you adapt it, and you make it better. So it's a gift as well. If you've got a gift of imagination and you want to write story, then that's fine. If you've got a gift for journalism, then that's fine. It's the skill you have as a human being. On the other hand, even if you don't have that skill, you can learn it like any other craft, and people have done that. You can learn it through courses, you can, as I did. It's not necessary you have to do it. Luckily for me, the fact I did literature for my degrees, whatever, helped me to learn more about how novels are formed, what they look like, what the formats like. So that background helped me. It's helpful. Having said that, not everybody needs to do degrees in literature to write, and I'm sure there are many writers who never read novels of the world or whatever, but they're writing. Secondly, I only did those courses, one, to learn how to target my stuff for journalism. I didn't know how to do it. So the course helped me for that. Similarly, I did a master's degree in script writing, because writing a novel is a different form of genre to writing script. Script writing for TV is totally different, and that course really did help me. But I could have done a short course, which I did, but I wanted to do a master's and I did it. But doesn't mean that every single script writer in the world has a master's degree to write a script. So I think yes and no. It's helpful if you can, but it's not necessary.
Yes. Another thing is that most of these stories, most of these writings from your generation have that real spark in them. I would say better than many women writers who have very deep knowledge, understanding, discussions in feminist theories and all that. My point is that writers from Pakistan, young writers, new writers from Pakistan, knowingly or unknowingly, their stories communicate very powerful codes, messages, very clearly in the typical feminist political structure.
Right.
Why does it happen? Is it due to the social structure there? Is it due to the mood of suppression which is prevailing over there? Or is it a manifestation of the inner spirit of these writers? How do you understand that?
Again, because of my own background, remember, I identify myself more with a British background. So the issue of the Pakistan side would not apply to me. But if it did apply to me, then probably what you say is correct.
Because you don't want to be identified as a feminist. You don't want that tag feminist.
I'm not against it, but my work deals with women's lives, so I'm not against it, nor for it. I don't want to be pigeonholed by it. But then the reality is, the work I write about is feminist. It relates to women's strong issues that I feel strongly about, if that's how you define feminism.
Okay, let me be precise. In your opinion, from which kind of a society really feminist writings will come? From a free UK, Western, German society, or a comparatively less free Pak, Indian or Afghan society? From where you think really works with real feminist spark will come up?
I think women have to be free, first of all, to be able to do that. If you're free to practice the art of writing, free to think for yourself, free to express yourself, then people will do it. But if you are afraid to write, don't have the opportunity to write, don't have that self-esteem to be able to write, then you can't do any of that. So lots of different factors affect the writing process. As I said in my earlier session, I'm able to write because all those factors, my education helped me, my work in literature helped me, the fact I have the time to write, the fact I have paper and pen to write, the fact I have a computer to type on, and the fact I know what to do with my writing. But if I didn't have any of that, would writing play a part in my life? When my whole life is just to do with housework or children, where writing plays no role, I would never conceive of thinking of writing, of becoming a writer. So really, it's a socio-cultural situation here that defines this process for me.
Yes,
I never forget that.
Let me quote from you and ask my next question. Are you free to practice the art of writing?
Yes, absolutely. Have been since I was 14. Although at first it wasn't fully appreciated, because I have a father who studied literature, but I know he pushed me more into the world of education, teacher training, inspection work, because there was more money coming in. It was a good career. Writing, he often thought, oh, well, you're wasting your time. You're not getting money from it. Why are you pursuing this? So really, in that context, I still pursued it, but it was lonely at times, and I needed to meet other writers to encourage me. So it's been a long journey. It hasn't happened overnight, and for many, many years, writing was like a poor sister. I struggled with it. For years, I didn't have time to write, I didn't even take it seriously, and guess what, I forgot to mention earlier, was I never called myself as a proper writer till my novel came out. Too humble, too demure to call myself a writer. It's only when I became a novelist, then I thought, well, now I can write down I'm a writer. But before, my world of education dominated. That was the real role. That was my real career. Writing was suffering, just did not have the same impact on my life. Since I've succeeded, you're meeting me after 10 years of success. Now, writing has taken over my life. These tours, these promotions, all of this. Now my poor education work is struggling, and I left a full-time job to concentrate on a writing career, because which full-time employer is going to give you time off in the middle of the year to go and do these launches and whatever? So luckily for me, I'm able to now have the ability, the time, the freedom to promote myself as a writer, to write and do what I want. Yes, 6-7 years ago, that wasn't possible. Not.
Okay, right. But the problem is that the circle that we call as freedom of speech, is being narrowed down day by day. That's what we see that is what we hear from all over the world. So there will come a day when even the space that you enjoyed today won't be there.
Well, I hope that is not the case. Absolutely. No, I agree with you totally. That can never happen. People should be able to express their opinion, should be able to do what they want. And as a part of human nature, in any society, you have to have that. Okay.
Let's go back to your Pakistan context. What is a general situation over there in case of publishing possibilities, reading habits, etc.?
Again, as I say, because I am not part of that scene so much as some of those Pakistan writers, I will just mention what I know. Probably they are behind India in terms of success stories, etc., in terms of the reading habits. Has a very good literacy rate. In Pakistan, still literacy is a problem. And then most of the books we mentioned, they write in English. Well, in real life, who are the real readers of that? The middle class, the upper class, the educated people. So many people will not access books or reading. Others will not be able to afford my novel, 500 rupees, who can afford it? So that is something that I felt I had to battle against. As a writer of a novel. With drama, everybody watches drama, and I succeed as a writer. I can reach my masses through that, but through novel. In terms of my own tours as a writer at universities, it was great. I had readers, I had professors reading my work, discussing my work, having that. It's a vibrant scene. We now have a literature festival in Karachi. It's like any other country, and it's going from strength to strength. So literature...
What about the habit of reading?
Habit of reading would be, I think, like anywhere else, struggling. Just as in England people struggle. My own sons, they hardly read many books these days. Even my third son, who was really into reading, I've noticed over a spread of 4 or 5 months, I said, have you read any books? Have you read any author? He hadn't, and I'm surprised. Having said that, I myself don't find much.
Let me ask you a personal question. What do these writers who write in vernacular, local languages, feel about writers like you, who write in English and famous all over the world?
I know.
What do they really feel about it?
I probably, if I was honest, I think obviously they're glad for us, some of them. They'll be gracious to say that. But I'm sure they also feel it's not fair. Not fair that people who write in English seem to become more successful abroad, their works get published, they have the publicity, they get on tours, etc. So that is something I feel very, very strongly about. And if you read the textbook I've left, I've written about this, is I would want local writers, and that's the same problem here in India. You know, all your famous writers write in English. And I've read newspaper cuttings saying local writers writing in regional languages are ignored, don't have the same opportunity, are downtrodden in that way, and they feel resentment, if they were honest about it.
And on the other side,
so it's the same in Pakistan. So my view is we need to have this process where those writers have an opportunity to reach that world, that their work is translated into English. So they have the same exposure, they have the same status, they have the interest, and also they're fabulous writers. Shouldn't we, the readers, be able to enjoy their work? Okay. Why have access to a narrow range of writers?
Is it really happening that these works written in local languages being translated into English?
I think
happening?
The process is there, but very minimal, to be honest with you. Some places happening, but one of my things is we should have a solid opportunity to do that as mechanism to ministries or whatever. For example, I've been to Indonesia Book Festival, I've come to India, and I was delighted to learn that there were local Indian writers. I was delighted to learn there was celebration of Indian languages, delighted to hear them. I thought, what's the point of having a festival in India when the foreigners take over? So I'm glad to know that they had the balance. Similarly, when I went to Indonesia, a lot of big foreign names, but I wanted to see more Indonesian, etc. So I think if a country's hosting festivals, etc., they should conscientiously promote, first of all, their own writers, their own languages, for their own personal self-esteem, for their own culture. Otherwise, it's unfair. Obviously, foreign writers are well and good. It's good to invite them, good for publicity, etc. But I think it should be equal. And that's my personal view, because I feel very strongly. I feel I'm lucky because I live in England. I'm lucky because I write in English. But what if I was ordinary Pakistani writer writing the Leader? Would I get this far? I doubt it. So, but it's not fair to those writers. They are great writers. Just because they've not had the access, the exposure to come out that we've had.
So, do you feel that it's your honest, it is your responsibility to promote that?
I do, absolutely. I'm doing that now, aren't I? I'm promoting that. I've written about it in the textbook that I've given to your department, where I say I would want the scene where local writers in other languages are promoted on a par as those writing in English. So I'm voicing that very verbally, because I feel it's unfair.
Okay.
And also give me an opportunity to meet some of those writers. When I went to that conference and I couldn't recognize who was who, and I felt so ashamed of myself, I thought, my God, I've studied literature, I'm a writer, and yet I don't even know who's the top writer of Pakistan. Here is Ahmad Nadeem Qasim, the father of Pakistan poetry, and I don't know who he is. Here is Ahmad Faraz, a man I'd never met. Since that, there has been this revolution inside me. I want to embrace the writers from my country of homeland. I want to learn about the writer. And they became friends. Ahmad Faraz came to stay with me, met me. I read their work and translate. So it's a two-way traffic. I want to reach out to my cultural background in literature. And my main loss has been because I was bred in England, did everything in English. I lost out on the work of Indian writers and Pakistani writers. And I feel that's a form of personal impoverishment. People ask me, have you read Manto? Have you read Ghalib? And I'm ashamed to say, look, I've read Ghalib recently because I was looking for a quote for my work. Manto I still not read. And yet I'm a well-read person, but in a Western context. So really, I'm in a different scenario than some others, because I did not have that literature background of the subcontinent of India.
On another context, you're working, by profession you are an educator, fielding in the work of education.
Right. Which means an awful lot to me.
Yes, and a writer. At a time when students are playing with iPods, iPads, Facebook and all that. How do you place yourself? What do you think about the role of writing, role of literature, role of written texts, written books?
Education is of paramount importance for me. I promote it everywhere I go, just as I did in previous, because I'm an educator. I also promote quality in education because as an inspector, my job is to sample quality. So when I train teachers, my focus is, look, you have to be excellent teachers to have excellent learning. So obviously my focus is on education, on learning. So learning, education, higher education leads to better lives, good work, etc. But the reality is nowadays, children are also taken over, whether it's me or my son or someone else. Technology means more people are spending time on Facebook, on their iPhone. All my sons, they have their iPhone in there. And the irony is, I too have my BlackBerry there. And we're often going backwards and forward. And I think this is madness. We are hooked to these things. We have become, well, what's the word? Hooked. There's another word to describe. We have become slaves to this technology. The reality we want to, but there comes a time when you need to be, I'm going to put the BlackBerry away for 2 weeks. Technology is marvelous. I couldn't do without it. As a modern woman living in a modern world, it's fantastic. But what we have to watch out is, I feel I'm spending more hours on emails, spending more hours on this screen, and I think my eyes will be damaged. And also not having the quality time that I could be spending with my children, with my husband, or reading a book. Why am I hooked? I'm either Googling, sending off messages, planning this, writing a report. So the computer is taking over our life. We love it, we like it. But I think there comes a time now we have to globally assess the impact on our life. How much is it taking us from our family life? How much is it taking us from interaction with real people? And what other damages are there?
Yes, but with reference to the availability of these gadgets and the access to these technologies, we are in between UK and Pakistan.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
What would you say, what would you suggest, what would you advise to students, learning community, as a senior educator, as a senior writer, as a senior person?
I would say technology
in what way they have to utilize these possibilities or problems?
Okay. We cannot get away from technology. We welcome it, we embrace it, we love it, we want it, we have it. But use it within a measure. Don't let it take over your life in a way that you compromise your reading, you compromise your academic studies, you compromise your social life, and you compromise your domestic life if you happen to be married with family, children. There has to be a limit to that process. Watch it. See that technology doesn't take over your life in a very negative, because there are repercussions. On the other hand, what would we do without technology? I just can't think of life without emails. I can't think of life without my computer. I'm an international person. How do I do it? I do it through the computer. If something happened with my computer in one day, I'm panicking. I cannot survive without it. But at the same time, I don't want to become a slave to it. I've got a home, I've got children, I've got family, I've got all those commitments. I need to get away from it too and concentrate on other aspects of my life.
It's another different thing, again with reference to Pakistan. I think I have read from Sonia Kamal's blog that Islam is not the official religion of Pakistan, but marriage is.
Oh, right.
What do you feel about that?
Oh dear, I hadn't thought of that. Marriage, I suppose what she may well mean, marriage is a very important issue. Like any other Muslim countries, and I'm sure it's the same, we talked about it at the festival, marriage is still the norm for many developing countries, including India and Pakistan, and in Muslim society, it's seen the accepted thing. So obviously, it's a big issue for women who are looking for partners and they're not finding them or they're not getting them, and the pressure is there to get married. Or if they're grown older, where are these men? So in that sense, marriage as an idea, as a concept, as a social issue is very, very important one. Similarly, some women, say from Pakistan, of my background in England, they would find it a problem as well because they're a minority and they're looking for partners. Where are these partners? And if you reach the age of over 30 or 40, well, where are you going to find a partner? So in that context, marriage remains an issue for all women in Eastern societies. I won't say label it as Muslim society, Eastern women, marriage is still the most important part of our lives. According to my opinion at this moment.
Yes.
But if you talk it in a Western context, no, you don't have to get married. Why should I marry? My neighbors never got married. They have children, they have partners, etc. But for most Eastern women, or least of all Muslim women, normally you have children within marriage.
Okay.
So in that sense, and family, children is still seen as the main part of life. So obviously marriage comes into it.
Yes, coming to the last part of our talk. You have said that you began to be noted as a writer through the translation of Pair of Genes into German first.
Right, yes.
And right now you are being translated into Malayalam, Hindi and so on.
Right.
What do you feel when you are being translated? One. Second, how do you feel when you are translated into a language which you don't know?
Yes, absolutely. It's lovely to have your work translated, because in a sense you're reaching out to new readers.
Don't know, you have no way to know
but that's what I'm going to come to. So you welcome the process because you want to reach new readers, like in China, Malayalam here. But you're absolutely right, you have no control over it, and I knew this. For example, for Indonesian context, I befriended the translator. When she wrote the messages, email, I noticed mistakes everywhere. I thought, oh my God, if this is what a standard of English like, what has she done to my novel? So when the second novel was being translated, then I asked the publisher, the publicity officer, her English was better, I could tell. I said, please, I want you to sample a chapter from this page from this chapter and match it with Indonesian to tell me it tallies. So the concern is there. When they translated my drama series into screenplays, I could tell that it was lovely. They had added words that I hadn't even thought of. There they had rehashed the language. When it's translated to Hindi, which is like similar to Urdu.
And you know Hindi, I think.
I know Hindi, but it was translated Urdu. I had half a chapter read out in Urdu by my translator, and I felt she had added life to the word. Urdu language is wonderful. It really is lovely. And when the way she written it and the way she read it, I felt proud that I had written it. But I think there she had done a good job. But what I will say, and agree with you, writers have no control over translation. And something is lost in translation, bound to be lost somewhere.
So you're happy and at the same time a bit worried about being translated.
You're always concerned, but you just go graciously with respecting people who've done it. But of course you don't accept translate unless you are sure that they can do it.
Okay. Now you will tell us in brief about your works in progress.
Right.
The works that are to come out from you.
Okay. Work in progress is, I've got a drama serial that I've done, which I'm going to go to Pakistan in September and help to get it produced, the one about cancer and domestic violence. I've started my fourth novel. It's called Silence. It's about honor killing and it's about terrorism, set in Pakistan and also set in Marrakesh. And guess what? I have no idea how it's going to go. I have no idea how it's going to end. It has to develop out of my head. All I have is two plots, one in Rabat and Marrakesh and the other bit in Pakistan, but I don't know which way it's going to go. And the fact I'm doing all these tours, I've been to Fiji, I've been to Australia, I'm now here, where am I going to get creative time to do all of this? So I'm struggling as a writer, trying to manage time to write this work, but it's in my head at the moment. Okay. The other thing is I'm going to launch your version of the Malayalam. Yes. I'm going to promote the story Genes that you have translated yourself. And when I go to China, I'm going to launch the Mandarin Chinese version of it. And talking about that, guess what? It's very difficult getting published in China, especially if you're a Muslim writer. They seem to be wary of Islam and Muslims. So one of my big challenges is going to be, and I welcome the challenge, so go out to them, say, look, read my books and tell me, I'm a Muslim woman, I'm proud to be a Muslim woman, but I'm harmless. So get to know people like me.
Okay, thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
A great educator, translator and writer.
Thank you so much, Prem.